Today we're making a ground beef stroganoff, which is a quick and cozy weeknight meal. The best part is you'll be done in less than 30 minutes, so here's what you'll need. Grab some ground beef, mushrooms, an onion, egg noodles, beef broth, heavy cream, all-purpose flour, and it's really important since we're not using cream of mushroom soup to thicken our sauce, this is doing it instead. Sour cream, plus MSG or salt, pepper, parsley, Dijon mustard, and garlic for flavor, plus some olive oil for cooking. If you clicked on this video, I have a guess you're either scrambling to get dinner on the table or looking for some cozy comfort food. I guess possibly both, but either way, you're not here to waste time, so I'm gonna talk you through this recipe right now. The prep for this ground beef stroganoff recipe is super simple. Just start with, of course, our ground beef. Today I'm using an 85-15 mix, and if that's a slightly higher fat percentage than what you're used to working with, just remember we actually want that higher fat content to help thicken our sauce. You can totally use a leaner mix if that's what you're working with. Just know that when we get to that step, you may need to add a little bit of extra oil or fat to get the right consistency. Mine was previously frozen, so if you're using the same, just make sure it's totally thawed out before you start cooking. Next, we need to prep some veggies. So I'm using a package of mushrooms. You can take a damp paper towel and just give them a wipe to clean off any dirt or debris that might still be on there. Give them a slice until they look something roughly like this. They truly do not need to be perfect. And this is about an 8-ounce package. You can actually use the stems of your mushrooms to help cut down on food waste in your kitchen. I promise by the time they are all chopped up and cooked down and mixed in with everything else, you won't even know they're there. Now, I normally use these baby bella or brown cremini mushrooms, but you can use really any type of mushroom you want. Any of them will add that earthy, umami, savory flavor to the finished dish. Next, dice up your onion, and again, does not need to be perfect. You do not have to impress anyone around here, and if it looks at all similar to this, you're doing great. Mince up the garlic or use the prepared stuff and you're ready to go. We're gonna start by cooking all of this together in a stainless steel skillet. So the key to cooking with stainless steel is to fully heat your pan before you add your ingredients. It's not quite the same as cooking with nonstick, although you can also use that if that's the type of cookware you already have. And this is a fun way to know if your pan is ready. Just take a few drops of water and drizzle them into your pan. If it's not ready yet, it's gonna sizzle, and if it is, it'll do this. Kind of cool, right? If you try that trick at home, just remember to wipe those water drops out of your pan before adding the oil. We know water and oil don't mix. But then you can go in with your diced onions and cook for just a couple of minutes until they look something kind of like this. At that point, you can add your sliced mushrooms and cook for another 5 to 6 minutes. You want to give it enough time over this medium-high heat to sweat out some of that moisture. They'll start to brown around the edges, and you will notice some things sticking to the bottom of the pan, but that's actually going to add a lot of flavor later, so we really don't mind. Finally, you can add that minced garlic and cook for just about a minute longer. We want to cook it through so that it starts to smell amazing, but we don't want to scorch it. Turn your heat down if you need to. At this point, you can transfer all of that out of the skillet to get ready to brown the ground beef. And this is usually the point in time where I start my egg noodles. Just bring a pot of water to a boil and cook according to package directions, and by the time they're finished, everything else will be too. Make sure you don't undercook the ground beef. You know what they say about cook until no pink remaining? Like, yes, do that. But if you have time, I really recommend a little bit longer. If you let it get a little bit crispy around that edge, I think that adds just even more delicious texture when you go to take that first bite. And remember that higher fat content from earlier? This is where that comes in handy because it's going to serve as the base for our thickener when we go to make our sauce. We're going to be making a roux in our skillet, which is just an equal part of flour plus fat or oil. And this is what helps us achieve that thick, creamy, rich sauce. So when your ground beef is fully cooked, you can mix those onions and mushrooms back in. Again, if you're using a leaner cut, this is the point where you would add a little bit of extra olive oil or butter, whatever is gonna get it to that right consistency. So you're just gonna dust your flour right over the top and whisk it in, and it's gonna make kind of this like paste consistency, and I promise it's not gonna look the best, but it's going to taste delicious. And at that point, we can pour in our beef broth to deglaze the bottom of that pan. It's gonna grab up all of those little cooked on bits and just infuse even more flavor into your sauce. After that, we can stir in that heavy cream and bring everything back up to a simmer. And within just a couple of minutes, we should be seeing that silky smooth, creamy, delicious, gravy-like consistency for our sauce. You can stir in that Dijon mustard and any MSG, salt, or pepper you're using. Now the key to adding that sour cream is to take it off the heat. The sour cream can curdle if we don't, and so just be really careful that you've got it off the burner or the heat turned down so that by the time you mix all of that in, there's no risk of your sour cream curdling. Now comes my absolute favorite part. This is where we get to taste it. I think it's so important to taste as you go to start to understand how the flavors are playing together and see what your palate thinks. I mean, everyone's taste buds are different. So this is a recipe, which means it's a suggestion, not a contract. You can change anything about this without anyone else's approval, especially me. I mean, it's my recipe, but you're the one making it. So essentially it's your recipe too. Strain your egg noodles and grab your bowls because it is time to eat. If you're like me and you like that added color from a garnish, you can do some chopped parsley or smoked paprika. Now I think this adds a lot of color, and if we're being honest, this dish could probably use a little color, but more importantly, I really like the flavor it adds. Yes, while it does dress it up a little and make it look prettier, I think at the end of the day, if your recipe tastes good and you're happy with it, that's all we're going for. I mean, that's a huge win. There's so many recipes out there that might look beautiful, but you take a bite and they're bland and flavorless and boring. And I think this ground beef stroganoff recipe should be anything but. I mean, we did a lot of work to make sure it had umami flavor, saltiness, a little bit of acidity. You know, all of those things are going to come together. And like I said, at the end of the day, if you can achieve all of that in less than 30 minutes for a weeknight meal, that is amazing. Let's do that again. All right, there's a very slim chance that you'll have some leftovers from this, and if you do, just stash them in the fridge for up to 5 days, reheat in the microwave whenever you're ready to eat it again, but I don't really struggle with this problem. Every time I make this meal, it is like gone. That is it for our ground beef stroganoff recipe. Hopefully you enjoy this as much as I did, but thank you so much for watching. My name is Kara and I'm the dietitian behind Street Smart Nutrition. So hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and we'll see you here again soon for more fearlessly nourishing meals. Okay. See if we can finish this all before I slam this coffee. Back. Use right there. For a minute while we brown the ground beef. No, brown the ground beef. Brown the ground beef.